Booktube, it's Mickey, VEDA video number 14, and I am here today to do the Cliche book tag. The book tag was created by Miranda Hayes, and I was tagged by Liz at Dancing Lizard. Lizard. I'm used to her old book name, so I'm mixing it up. But Liz at Dancing Lizard. And it's just a book tag with questions that are all kind of cliches. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. So the first cliche is actions speak louder than words. And the question is a book that wasn't or couldn't be better than the film. So the book that I'm gonna pick for that is The Shining by Stephen King. I saw Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining several times, long before I actually read the book, and so I knew that was going to be an issue when I read the book. Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of the book is very much way more abstract and cerebral than the actual book. He is a lot less sympathetic to the protagonist character than King is, and he just he's not as much concerned with the why of things happening the way King is. So he just throws all kind of images into the piece without necessarily explaining why they're there. So even though, because there's a lot of stuff that has backstory obviously from the book, and Kubrick still kind of cherry picks things from the book and throws them in there without providing the backstory. So for instance, he throws the image of the guy in the dog costume giving a blowjob to this one guy without actually explaining what's the story behind that image. But I think that actually worked because it made the film, to me, scarier, and it freaked me out more because there was just all this randomness that was happening, and you're just like, what the hell is happening? So I admire Kubrick's choices in the film a lot more than I think I actually admire King's. Stephen King freaking hated Kubrick's adaptation of his film initially. I think he came around eventually, but he really did hate it the first time when it originally came out. And but I think that I think he made the right choices. It feels like a genuine adaptation, a genuine new fresh piece, and not just a play-by-play scene of the book. And I really, really like it, and there are definitely choices that Kubrick makes that I prefer to King's. So the grass is always greener on the other side. Rags to riches or riches to rags story. And go with The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think it's a perfect rags to riches story. Gatsby gets the money and he still doesn't get the girl. So love this book, and I think it just does a good job of showing how money isn't everything, and how elusive the American dream is, and yada yada yada. Y'all all know about this one. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. A parent-child relationship you loved. I realized when I saw this question that I don't tend to read books that have good parent-child relationships. The books that I tend to read tend to have really bad, negative sort of relationships between the parents and child. But I'm going to re-mention, I've already talked about it this month a couple of times, but I'm going to re-mention Cutting for Stone by Abraham Verghese, because there are some really great parent-child relationships in here. Marion and Shiva's relationship with their I guess you can call them their adoptive parents, Ghosh and Hema, and then their kind of complicated relationship with their birth parents also are all really, really interesting in this book. I particularly like Marion's relationship with his dad, his birth dad, when he finds him in America, and just the sort of situation that they go through and stuff. Another one that has a really good parent-child relationship is The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963 by Christopher Paul Curtis. The parents in this book are just hilarious. They remind me a lot of Heathcliff and Claire from The Cosby Show. Just very understanding parents, strict. They want their kids to do the right thing and make the right decisions, but they are also trying to be there. They want to be there for their kids and provide their kids with comfort and a place where they can feel safe and loved. And I don't know, I just really, really like them. And they're hilarious. Their parents are absolutely hilarious, and they get up to some really great hijinks in this book. So those would be some of my favorite parent-child relationships. You can't judge a book by its cover. A great book that needs a better cover. That is basically every Toni Morrison book ever. I don't know why they do Toni so darn wrong with her book covers. The only good book covers I've ever seen of her books are some ones that are recently came out. They're the covers that are like all white, and then it has like a pop of color from like some like an accent color, like The Bluest Eye. It's like an all white cover, and then there's like these sky blue marbles on it. And then I think Sula is like all white, and then there's like a sunflower or a daisy or something like that. Those are really nice, but otherwise, like, I feel like all of the covers for Toni Morrison books are either really bad or just not that fantastic. They're just really ordinary and plain. So she definitely deserves way better covers, in my opinion. Where did I at? You Can't Please Everyone. A book you hated / loved that everyone else loves / hates. So I'm going to go with a book that I loved that lots of people aren't crazy about, and that is Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking. I talked about this a little bit earlier this month, last week, and this is actually quite a polarizing book. I found that there were a lot of people who really you either really like it or you really hate it, and a lot of people that I know personally really don't like this book. A lot of the things that I like about the book too is a part of the reason why they don't like it, so I think that's really interesting. A lot of people don't like this book because they feel that she's very cold and distant in the book, and I actually really like that. I like that she's so clinical. I like that this book isn't like dripping with pathos and emotion. I think that that's an interesting way to look at grief. And I also think that it's unfair to say that she isn't in pain, because I feel like I felt her pain. I feel like there is pain in the attempt to not feel pain. Does that make any sense? You know, like when someone attempts to not feel pain, to not express it, there's something that comes out of that. And I really, really like that. There's also people who kept saying stuff about how they felt like Didion was like super privileged, and I'm like, she is super privileged. Like, she's been writing, she's a successful like New York Times she's a successful best-selling author. She's been writing for years. She does have a very privileged lifestyle, and since this is a story about her life, I don't really know what you expect her to do. It's not as if she doesn't like acknowledge her privilege. I feel like there's times where she does that. Like, she talks a lot about how she's a person who is always a doer. She's a person who always knows what to do. She knows where to tell people to go to solve their problems and solve their issues. And she talks about how kind of helpless she felt after her husband's death, and then when her daughter was sick, because there was really literally nothing she could do. None of her contacts that she had, none of the money that she had could do anything to kind of help her out of those situations. So like, I don't know, I thought that was a really like bad criticism of this book. I don't understand why people but a lot of people were complaining. They were like, oh, she keeps talking about flying to New York and California and all of the famous people that she met and yada yada yada. I didn't feel like it was excessive. I feel like she was telling us the story of her life, and those things are involved in the story of her life. But anyways, I really liked this book, and I think it's a great look at grief, and it's a book that I know I want to return to at some point. So yeah. What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger. A book you are a better person for having read. I've talked about some books earlier before, but I think the one that I'm going to go with today is The Sign in Sidney Bernstein's Window by Lorraine Hansberry. This is technically, this is a bind-up of both A Raisin in the Sun and The Sign in Sidney Bernstein's Window, but I'm talking specifically about this play. This play is about a bunch of artistic people living in Greenwich Village in like the 40s, 50s, and just about how disillusioned they sort of are becoming with the world, and how they have to kind of sort of rediscover their hope. And it's a really, really beautiful play. It's super hard to summarize. I was trying to figure out how to summarize it for this video, and it's like, it's really not an easy summary. Like, it's basically this guy, like, he believes in this politician, and he's working, you know, like, he has a sign in the window of his store that supports this politician, and then he finds out that this politician isn't all he's cracked up to be, and there's just like all these like different changes that are happening in their community, and it's just like, it's kind of hard to summarize, but it's really a sincerely beautiful play. And I'm gonna read a quote real quick from the book that kind of like sums up like the, I don't know what the moral of the book is or whatever, but it's one of the reasons why I really, really love this play. So this guy tells Sydney, he says, "You really are a fool," and he says, "Always have been. A fool who believes that death is waste and love is sweet, and that the earth turns and men change every day, and that rivers run, and that people want to be better than they are, and that flowers smell good, and that I hurt terribly today. And that hurt is desperation, and desperation is energy, and energy can move things." And he says this after a character has died, and he's kind of standing up to the Wally character and basically telling him that I'm going to challenge you and attempt to take you down, even though he knows that there's a huge chance that he'll lose. And it's just a really beautiful, hopeful play. Like I've mentioned before, I don't really read a lot of things that are very hopeful, so I think that's part of the reason why I think this play makes me like a better person, because it just gives me hope for the world. Love is Blind, a book with a disabled character or actual blind love. So I'm going to go with The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams for this. In it, the sister character, whose name I'm drawing a blank on right now, has a limp, she has it seems like she has like a lame leg, and she has like this limp, and it's the source of a lot of her discomfort. It's a source of her unattractiveness. It's the reason why she kind of isn't doing well in life. She doesn't go out. And the thing that's really great about the way it works in the play is that there is a moment where you are made to sort of question whether or not she actually is as bad off, as whether or not her infirmity is actually as bad as she claims it is, or if her and her family have just sort of blown it out of proportion as an excuse for why she can't go out into the world. It's really, really interesting. And so I pick that for a play with a disability, and also a play with blind love, because there's like a little bit of she definitely has like a huge crush on someone who doesn't like see her, so that's interesting. Ignorance is Bliss, a book you know is bad but don't want to admit it, or a book you don't want to read in case it's bad. So a book is not a book I know is bad but don't want to admit it. It's more so books that I suspect I'm going to hate, but I'm still gonna read them anyway. Like they just aren't necessarily books that are for me, but for some reason I want to check them out out of just morbid curiosity, I guess. So for instance, any book by John Green, I've never read a book by John Green before. I'm like 75 to 80% sure that I'm probably not gonna like it, but I want to try it anyways, just to be sure, I guess. I don't know. Another book that I can think of, books by Rainbow Rowell. Like, never read a book by Rainbow Rowell before, but I want to check it out just to see, even though I suspect that I will probably not like it because it's not necessarily my thing. I still want to check it out. I just am a masochist like that. I don't know. I want to check out this romance series by Julia Quinn. I think it's Julia Quinn, The Duke and I, or something like that. I want to check that out, even though, again, I suspect I will not like it. But I don't know. I just like trying new things. So, yeah, that would be my answer for, like, books so they're basically books that I know I'm going to hate, but I might read them anyways. ignorance, right? There is no time like the present. What is your favorite contemporary book? I took this to mean your favorite book that has been written like recently or in your like this your time period, which I think is a really hard question for me to answer. So I'm just gonna try and pick some of my favorite reads between this year and last year that were published between this year and last year. And those books would be The Sellout by Paul Beatty, Counter Narratives by John Keene. There's another one. Counter Narratives by John Keene. The Vegetarian by Han Kang. Actually, I think those three kind of sum up like books that were published in the last like year or so. Are three books that I really, really liked. I did a review of The Vegetarian and of Counter Narratives that I can post up somewhere. And then I talked about Paul Beatty's The Sellout in my favorite books of last year. Super happy to see that it's been longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. I just think it's a really interesting, very scathing satire about race. It just really made me think. It made me laugh. It made me very uncomfortable. And I just think that it's a really great book. A book that I really want to return to at some point. So definitely one of my favorite recently published books. Then there's Better Safe Than Sorry. A book you don't want to read in case it's bad. Or vice versa. So a book that I don't want to read, I keep avoiding reading because I think that it's going to be bad, is Moby Dick, which I talked about before. There's just like absolutely nothing about Moby Dick that appeals to me besides the fact that it's considered a modern classic. Like the storyline doesn't sound that interesting to me. I said before in the New York by the book tag that one of the storylines the types of story I tend to stay away from are books about man versus nature. And I feel like that's a huge part of Moby Dick, like man versus the sea and stuff like that, which I'm just usually not attracted to. So I'm like, everything about that book I think I'm gonna hate it. I really do. That's why I keep avoiding it. But I still want to read it. I still want to check it out. Another book that I think I'm not gonna like, but and so it's kind of why I'm pretty much hesitating picking it up, because I'm like, I don't think I'm going to like this, is this one here, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I just have this fear that this book is going to be extremely emotionally manipulative, and I really can't stand that. I'm hoping that that's not the case. I'm hoping that if there is ringing of emotions, that it's actually earned. But I don't know. I just have fears. People have planted a lot of doubt in me about that book. So yeah, this is the Cliche book tag. Yeah. If you haven't done this tag and you'd like to, you are now tagged. I'll put the questions down in the description below, and I will talk to you guys later. All right, bye-bye.